Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. This time we're taking a look at the possibility of life on Saturn.
Yeah, it's funny because when you say life on Saturn,
People immediately think of like
ring, right?
the rings or
Like a big gas giant.
we're diving into some research and articles about not just if it could exist, but what that life would even look like.
And I think what's even more interesting is what if we've already detected it, but we just don't know how to recognize it?
Oh, that's a good one.
Because we're so used to thinking about life in our very Earth-centric view.
Right. So just to get started,
Uh-huh.
Saturn is known for that unique atmosphere. Hydrogen, helium, methane, ammonia, and apparently even metallic hydrogen.
Deep down,
Yeah.
yeah, super pressurized, incredibly cold, no solid surface to speak of.
Could anything really survive there?
Well, that's the thing. When we talk about life beyond Earth, we really have to think outside of our terrestrial biases and think about different biochemistries.
So we're not talking about little green men or
Yeah.
even anything that's like carbon-based.
Not necessarily. There are scientists who believe that life on Saturn could be based on completely different chemistries, using elements like methane as a solvent instead of water or even ammonia.
And so instead of breathing oxygen, what would they breathe?
Well, they might not breathe at all. It could be entirely different processes for energy production.
So what are some of the other crazy ideas about how they would create energy?
Well, one idea is that they could use radiation, like we see with some extremophiles on Earth. Certain types of fungi can actually use radiation
Really?
for energy. So it's not completely out of the realm of possibility that there could be creatures floating around in Saturn's atmosphere soaking up that radiation.
So you're saying there could be creatures just floating in the atmosphere?
The idea of floaters is a really interesting one. These would be organisms that are buoyant in Saturn's dense atmosphere,
Ah.
absorbing radiation, maybe even chemicals as a food source, and potentially even controlling their buoyancy to move up and down in the atmosphere to find the most favorable conditions.
So no little green men, but maybe like giant radiation-powered sky jellies.
Or it's all speculation at this point, but that's what makes this so exciting.
Right, it's like the unknown, which is kind of terrifying.
Exactly. We're venturing into a realm that we just don't understand yet.
And speaking of the unknown, one of the articles mentions that even if life on Saturn isn't intentionally trying to communicate, it could be creating these signals.
Ah, yes. The idea that biological processes, even at a microscopic scale, could be generating fluctuations or patterns in Saturn's radio emissions.
So like a hum.
Kind of like a subtle hum of life.
Yeah.
Not a message, but just a byproduct of their existence.
So how would scientists even be able to pick that up?
Well, it's an incredible challenge to separate that hum from the background noise of Saturn's natural radio emissions.
Right, because it's a very noisy planet.
It is. But scientists are developing some amazing tools and techniques to do just that. They're using high-powered radio telescopes to listen to Saturn. And they're developing algorithms and using things like machine learning to filter out that background noise and search for any unusual patterns that might stand out.
So is it kind of like searching for a needle in a haystack, but like a cosmic haystack?
Exactly. It's an immense task, but the potential payoff is incredible.
Oh, for sure. But you know what I'm wondering? Let's say they find something. How would we ever begin to understand a signal from a life form that's so different from us?
That's a million-dollar question. And one we'll definitely be exploring further
Okay, cool.
as we go deeper into this topic.
Perfect.
Okay, so we're talking intelligent life on Saturn. But how do we even begin to picture that?
I mean, that's the thing, right? It's not going to be like us. It's got to be so different.
Exactly. We can't just slap a bigger brain on an Earth creature and call it a day.
Right. Like with Saturn, we're talking about an entirely different environment.
Yeah.
Incredibly cold, thick atmosphere, mostly hydrogen and helium.
And immense pressure. The further down you go, the more intense it gets.
So not exactly a walk in the park.
No, not at all. And that's why it's so fascinating to consider how life could not just survive, but thrive and evolve intelligence in such a place.
Our sources mention some pretty wild ideas.
Oh, yeah. For starters, let's ditch the idea of carbon-based life forms. Maybe life on Saturn isn't built on the same fundamental building blocks as us?
Like, what else is there?
Well, some scientists propose that instead of water, these organisms might use liquid methane or ammonia as a solvent.
Liquid methane. Wow, I can't even imagine.
It's a radical concept, but when you consider the conditions on Saturn, it starts to make a bit more sense.
Okay, so let's say they're not carbon-based and they're swimming in methane. What about energy? How would they fuel themselves in that kind of environment?
Now that's where things get really interesting. Remember those extremophiles we talked about earlier?
The ones that eat radiation.
Exactly. Well, some researchers believe that life on Saturn could be radiotrophic, meaning they derive energy from radiation.
So they're basically soaking up all that radiation that would kill us and using it to power their little methane brains.
It's a mind-boggling concept, but it's not entirely out there. Saturn has incredibly powerful radiation belts, much stronger than Earth's.
Because of its magnetic field, right?
Exactly. It traps charged particles from the solar wind, creating these intense zones of radiation. And perhaps life has found a way to tap into that energy source.
Okay, I'm trying to picture this. We've got these strange radiation-powered creatures maybe floating through Saturn's atmosphere. But could they really develop intelligence in a place like that?
Well, defining intelligence in an alien context is a whole other challenge.
It might not look anything like what we consider intelligence, right?
Exactly. But think about it. These organisms would have to navigate a three-dimensional, constantly shifting atmospheric environment. They'd need to adapt to changes in pressure, temperature, and composition.
So maybe they've evolved these incredible sensory systems.
Absolutely. Perhaps they can sense subtle variations in magnetic fields or pressure gradients. Maybe they communicate through bioluminescent flashes or intricate patterns in their movements.
It's like a whole different language of intelligence.
Precisely. And it's likely one that we wouldn't immediately recognize, but that doesn't mean it's not there.
So we're talking about intelligence that's uniquely adapted to Saturn's environment. Not necessarily building spaceships, but solving problems and thriving in ways we can't even fathom.
Exactly. And that brings us back to those signals we were talking about. Even if these creatures aren't deliberately trying to send us messages, their mere existence, their interactions with their surroundings could create detectable patterns in Saturn's radio emissions.
So it's not like we're listening for a voice or a message, but more like a cosmic heartbeat, a subtle fluctuation that betrays the presence of life.
A brilliant analogy. And detecting that faint heartbeat amidst the cacophony of Saturn's natural radio waves, well, that's the monumental task facing scientists.
It's like finding a whisper in a hurricane.
But with ever-advancing technology and analytical techniques, who knows what we might uncover?
Okay, but even if we detect these signals, how could we ever hope to understand a form of intelligence so fundamentally different from our own?
That is the ultimate question. And it takes us to the core of what it means to be intelligent, to communicate, and to comprehend the universe around us.
It's a question that might not have an easy answer.
And one that we'll delve into even further as we continue our deep dive.
All right, so we've talked about these crazy possibilities of life on Saturn, but how are scientists actually looking for it?
Well, it's not as simple as just pointing a telescope at the planet and hoping for the best.
Yeah, makes sense.
It requires a combination of really advanced technology, sophisticated analysis techniques, and a whole lot of scientific curiosity.
So where do they even begin?
Well, one of the most important missions, even though it ended back in 2017, was NASA's Cassini spacecraft. It spent over a decade orbiting Saturn, collecting an incredible amount of data.
Oh yeah, I remember hearing about Cassini.
Yeah, it was a game changer. It gave us this incredibly detailed look at Saturn's atmosphere, magnetic field, and its radio emissions.
So basically it provided a baseline for understanding what's normal for Saturn.
Exactly. And that's crucial because if you want to find something unusual, you need to know what the usual looks like.
Makes sense. So what about those subtle radio signals we've been talking about? How do they try to find those?
That's where organizations like the SETI Institute come in. They're the experts in searching for extraterrestrial intelligence.
Oh yeah, SETI, I've heard about them.
They're mostly known for looking for deliberate messages from alien civilizations, but their expertise is also incredibly valuable for searching for those unintentional biosignatures.
So like those subtle fluctuations that might indicate life, even if it's not trying to talk to us?
Exactly. They've developed these incredible algorithms and analysis techniques to sift through massive amounts of data, looking for patterns and anomalies.
That must be like trying to find a needle in a haystack.
It's an incredibly challenging task, but the potential payoff is huge. If we can find evidence of life, even microbial life on Saturn, it would be a monumental discovery.
Absolutely. But it's not all about high-tech telescopes and algorithms, right?
No, there's another crucial piece to this puzzle, and that's understanding life in extreme environments here on Earth.
You mean those extremophiles again?
Precisely. By studying those creatures that thrive in conditions that would kill most other life forms, we can start to get a sense of what might be possible on other worlds.
So by looking at the most extreme life forms on Earth, we can broaden our understanding of what life might look like on Saturn.
Exactly. It helps us break free from those Earth-centric biases that can limit our thinking. Who knows? Maybe the key to understanding life on Saturn lies hidden in some deep sea vent or volcanic hot spring right here on Earth.
That's a pretty amazing thought.
Yeah.
But let's say we do find evidence of life on Saturn. What would that mean for humanity?
That's a really profound question, and I don't think anyone has a definitive answer. But I do believe it would have a huge impact on our understanding of our place in the universe.
It would mean we're not alone.
Exactly. It would force us to confront the possibility that life may be a common occurrence throughout the cosmos, and it would open up a whole new realm of scientific inquiry. Imagine what we could learn from studying an alien life form, especially an intelligent one.
It would be a revolution in scientific thought, but also a philosophical and cultural one. It would make us rethink our place in the universe and our responsibilities to other life forms.
It's a humbling thought to realize that our planet, our civilization, our entire history might just be a tiny blip in a vast, teeming universe full of wonders we can barely imagine.
Well said. Well, I think that about wraps up our deep dive into the possibility of life on Saturn. It's been a mind-blowing journey exploring the challenges, the research, and the implications of finding life beyond Earth.
It has been fascinating, and I hope it sparks some curiosity in our listeners. There's so much out there that we don't know, and that's what makes it so exciting.
Absolutely. So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep looking up at the stars. Who knows what incredible discoveries are waiting for us out there in the vast expanse of the cosmos?